Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're opening up some really powerful sources. Elizabeth Edwards' own reflections on getting through, well, a life hit by storm after storm.
Yeah, and our goal here is to really look at resilience, not as, something you are, but something you do. It's a practice.
Yeah.
Edwards faced just unbelievable things. Losing a child, serious illness, a marriage crisis.
And watching her father decline, too.
Exactly. And through it all, she had to redefine survival. She basically found that resilience isn't about dodging the hits or even getting back to perfect. It's about accepting this unavoidable new reality.
Even if it's a tough one.
Even if it's tough, yeah. Learning to live fully inside that new space.
And a key idea threading through all of this is what she called the impossibility of perfection. She mentions starting out wanting this, idealized story for her life.
Right, set to Benny Goodman or Henry James, smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing, exactly. She was geared up for problems she could, fix. But life threw these absolute tragedies at her, things that just couldn't be fixed.
Okay. The sources really show someone who built her world, assuming she had control. And when that chaos hit,
The whole thing just crumbled.
it did. She wasn't just mourning the events themselves, she was mourning the loss of that expected narrative, that perfect script.
So it became a journey from expecting flawlessness to realizing, okay, the rhythm of my life has to be made up as I go. It might be messy.
Discordant even,
Yeah.
but ultimately hers.
Okay, so let's dig into that first lesson, where she first saw this kind of survival mechanism up close, watching her own father adapt after a massive health crisis back in 1990. Can you paint a picture? Vince Anania before the stroke.
Oh, he was, well, formidable. A really vital guy, almost 70, but she describes him having cannonballs for shoulders.
Wow.
Yeah. Played tennis, rode his bike that day. Just a picture of, robust physical strength. And then, bam, 4 days before his 70th birthday, a huge stroke. He just collapsed at the dinner table.
And the medical verdict was brutal, almost like a death sentence before the illness itself.
It really was. The doctor apparently just walked in, no sugarcoating, and said, he will never walk. His brain is dead.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Devastating. She talks about standing at the hospital sink, just trying to wash away the hot sting of those words, that feeling of...
Utter powerlessness.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what's amazing is that feeling of surrender was met almost immediately by this incredible defiance from her father.
What happened?
She turned back from the sink, and his eyes were wide open, communicating panic, yes, but also life. Resistance, like he was screaming without words, I am here, I am not dead, I want to live.
Wow. And that's even more powerful when you consider his past. You mentioned his physical strength. She shares an anecdote about his military days, right?
Yeah, it's quite a story. Making captain, getting thrown in the pool in his flight suit, kind of a tradition, I guess. But the men respected him when they saw his supremely muscled form. His identity was tied to that physical presence.
Which was now essentially gone.
Exactly. The physical power was shattered. But that core will, that desire to live, it was absolutely intact. And that led to this, this incredible 18-year adjustment.
18 years.
18 years. He learned to talk again, though she mentions he was often hilariously inappropriate, saying things like, the boobs are boiling.
Small chuckle.
Yeah, but he was communicating. He learned to drive again, terrifyingly, apparently. He traveled. He even danced with his wife for almost 2 more decades.
So it wasn't about getting the old life back. It was about mastering the life he had, even diminished.
Precisely. What Edwards took away was that his resilience wasn't about recovery in the traditional sense. It was this constant adaptation. She called it narrowing his life and his expectations to what he had left.
Accepting the boundaries.
And choosing to live with, as she put it, sheer majesty right there, within those boundaries. It proved to her that perfection just wasn't required for resilience.
Yeah.
You don't need everything back. You just hold on to what you do have left.
That idea, imperfect resilience, seems absolutely crucial. But if her father's stroke was lesson 1 in adaptation, 1996 must have felt like the final brutal exam. How did that concept hold up against something truly unfixable, like losing her son Wade?
Well, it shattered any remaining illusion of control. Completely. Wade was 16. Killed when just a gust of wind pushed his car off the road.
Oh, unimaginable.
Yeah. And by all accounts, he was this wonderful kid, loyal, humble, fair, had climbed Kilimanjaro but never bragged about it. She even quotes something he wrote at age 7, look at the inside of people, not the outside. Just a profound loss.
And their whole way of thinking, work hard, be smart, solve the problem, it was just useless here.
Totally useless. They felt, in her words, totally impotent. And she uses this metaphor that really hits home. captures that feeling of erasure.
The empty blackboard.
That's the one. Her whole identity, mother, lawyer, all of it just wiped clean. She couldn't write anything at all. Initially, it was denial, pure denial. She'd spend time in his room, leave his backpack by the door, waiting for God or the universe to just set back the world a little turn or two. It's such a painful image, isn't it? Just hoping for the impossible.
It really is. But then her path to finding some kind of footing was, well, quite modern for the time, wasn't it? She found solace online.
Yeah, in those very early internet days, online grief communities, alt.support.grief, griefnet.org, which seems counterintuitive for a public figure, maybe.
Why was that anonymity so important, do you think?
Because it stripped everything else away. No faces, no jobs, no politics, no reputations. Online, she wasn't Elizabeth Edwards' political wife. She was just Wade's mother. And that let her just pour out the raw pain without facing the judgment, however well-intentioned, of the blessedly uninitiated, as she called them.
People who just couldn't understand.
Right. People who hadn't been through that specific hell. It became this haven where shared grief and total honesty were the currency.
And that space allowed her to shift, eventually, from just waiting for him.
To actively doing something. She called it parenting his memory. They created physical memorials, like the Wade Edwards Learning Lab, which is still going strong.
Right.
And then they had 2 more children, Emma Claire and Jack. And Wade wasn't a taboo subject. He was part of their family story, actively included.
So incorporating the loss, not trying to erase it, that's adaptation again.
It absolutely is. The absence doesn't vanish, obviously. But her definition of her life, her family, it expanded to hold that memory within it.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We move into the mid-2000s, roughly 2004 to 2008. And it's just relentless. She's got major health battles and this profound crisis in her marriage hitting basically at the same time.
Yeah, it's one thing after another.
And she uses another metaphor, an industrial one this time, that seems to connect the earlier losses to this period of chaos, the Maytag factory closing.
Right, in Newton, Iowa.
Yeah.
The workers leaving their boots by the factory door, for her, that symbolized leaving behind a life plan, a map that no longer comported with the ground.
So the old way of life is gone. You can't use the old map anymore.
Exactly. Those workers lost their identity as Maytag employees, as providers, in that specific way. Edwards was losing her identity, too, as a healthy person, and eventually as a partner in the way she understood it. She had to consciously say, okay, this is the new reality, and it needs a completely new map.
Let's take the health part first. She gets the breast cancer diagnosis in 2004, initially treated as, a huge hurdle, but maybe a surmountable one.
That seems to be the initial feeling, yes. A major fight, but one she expected to win. But then, the recurrence in 2007, finding out it had metastasized, that changed everything.
That forced a kind of final surrender, didn't it? Over her own body, her future, the idea she'd live into her 90s like her grandmother's.
Poof, gone. And her approach to fighting incurable cancer became really interesting. She framed it as an asymmetrical war.
How so?
Well, if she couldn't directly control the cancer cells inside her, the enemy within, she'd attack on a different front. She threw her energy into fighting for healthcare access for others.
Using her platform.
Exactly. Using her notoriety, her illness itself, as fuel. She talks about meeting a woman, Sheila, who whispered she was terrified because she had no insurance. That kind of encounter really drove her advocacy. Fight the systemic issues since she couldn't fully control the personal one.
And then, layered right on top of this life and death health battle, comes the news about her husband's infidelity, a complete shattering of trust.
A shattering. She compares herself to Tecmessa, the wife of the warrior Ajax in Greek myth, whose husband comes back from war fundamentally changed, wounded by his own actions.
Bearing self-inflicted wounds, yeah.
And the shock was profound, especially because they had shared the deep, unique grief of losing Roe v. Wade together. That bond, she thought, was unbreakable. The trust was supposed to be deep, she wrote. The smiles were supposed to last forever.
You can feel the self-doubt in that, the questioning everything.
Absolutely. Betrayal always does that, doesn't it? Makes you question your own judgment, your reality.
But the sources suggest she eventually came to see it less as a reflection on her and more about his vulnerabilities. Is that right?
Yes, that seems to be the shift. She started seeing it as his weakness for obsequiousness, she called it. This need for adoration, for unbridled loyalty from people around him.
People who maybe wanted something from their life, like the staffer she calls Jim.
Right. seeing it not just as a betrayal of her, but as a character flaw in him, this vulnerability to flattery, this deep need for external validation that seemed to allow her, paradoxically, to process it differently.
It separated her worth from his actions, maybe.
Perhaps. It allowed her to see him struggling with his own shame. And that understanding led to her final, really crucial adaptation, deliberately choosing her outlook.
Okay, this is where she stops waiting for rescue, stops waiting for things to get better on their own, and decides to actively be inspired. And she uses that fantastic Groundhog Day movie metaphor.
It's a brilliant metaphor, isn't it? Her point was Bill Murray's character, Phil Connors, doesn't escape that endless, miserable day by hoping the world changes around him.
No, he changes himself.
He changes himself. He uses the repetition to learn, to become better, kinder, more skilled. She realized the only thing she truly had control over, in the face of all this chaos, was her response, how she chose to navigate the storm.
So, looking back at her whole story then, resilience isn't a destination you arrive at. It's this continuous, sometimes really painful process of adjusting, correcting course, choosing to live with intensity.
Even when your world has shrunk, even when you're limited.
And that intensity, it seems, comes from letting go of perfection.
Yeah, I think the synthesis of everything, the heartbreak, the adapting, the rebuilding, it's all captured beautifully when she references Leonard Cohen's anthem.
Oh, that's such a powerful quote. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering.
There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. She really lived that. She understood that life, real life, the light, it doesn't come through the polished, perfect facade she once wanted. It comes through the cracks, the breaks, the imperfections. And ultimately, she concluded the answers weren't out there. Looking at other people's lives, whether they seemed luckier or suffered more. The answer wasn't in their lives, she said. It was in mine.
It's an internal journey.
Completely. The real contest, she believed, is always with ourselves. It's about closing the gap between the man or woman we are and the man or woman we could be. Not about comparing ourselves to some external standard.
And her final wish for how she'd be remembered.
That she would be seen as someone who stood in the storm and when the wind did not blow her way, and it surely has not. She adjusted her sails.
An incredible way to frame facing life's unavoidable difficulties, a powerful model.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, think about this narrative you've just heard, this story of struggle, loss, and relentless adaptation. The question to leave you with is this. If you accept, truly accept, that the map you have for your life will always need adjusting, what's the single biggest expectation or assumption about your own future that you might need to let go of today, right now, so you can start adjusting your own sails toward your new, imperfect, but very real reality?